Hey guys, today I've got another review for you with the NUU A25. I got this phone for $170 on Amazon, and when I saw the specs for it, I just couldn't help but buy. What really caught my attention was that this had an OLED screen at 120 Hertz, which I've pretty much never seen except for in the used market or refurbished market around that price. So I really wanted to check it out. And this caught my interest because it's unlocked and it's aimed at the US market, which not a lot of budget phones are. So I went ahead and bought this so I could share with you guys my experiences with it. And just a little spoiler, this phone did not disappoint for me and what I value a lot in a phone. So let's go ahead and get into the hardware here. So starting at the bottom, we've got a USB-C port, down firing speaker, a microphone, and an audio jack, which is pretty rare, as we know, except for on this channel, a lot of phones we review are budget, so we actually have those quite a bit. On this side, we have the SIM card and a expandable memory card, which can take up to, I believe, a terabyte. On the top here, we have another microphone, so this has stereo audio recording. And on the right side, we have a volume rocker and the power button. And then on the back, obviously, we have the camera array, which we can get into a little later. One thing that this phone has hardware-wise that's also not on a lot of budget phones is the under-screen fingerprint reader, and this one works quite well. So that's pretty much the hardware. I really like the hardware on this phone. The buttons are clicky and tactile. The speaker's pretty nice. Everything is just, it feels a lot more premium than the price would suggest. So now that we've talked about hardware, let's get into the software a little bit. This is running a vanilla build of Android. So it feels exactly like my Google Pixel, honestly, and I'm a big fan of that. Of course, there's a couple things that are missing, like the call screening and that kind of stuff that Google has on all of its phones. Though this does have a treble compatibility, so you can use Google GSI ROMs if you wanted to get some of those Pixel functionalities into this phone. And honestly, you might need to, because I couldn't find any information on this phone about future promised updates, any major OS updates. I have received the security updates up until November, so I assume they'll keep doing those. But again, I haven't found any promises from the company themselves about how long they'll do that. So you might find that you have to go the GSI ROM route if you want to get the most latest and greatest from Android. On the software front, like I said, it's pretty much what Google is running, so it's really nice. My only complaint is the auto brightness on this phone. I don't know what it is, but it's either too bright or too dim. So I think they just need to do some tweaking. And again, that's something that maybe loading a ROM like Lineage or Google's official or the AOSP ROM could fix for you. But I haven't tried that myself. I've been pretty happy with where this phone's at, and I just manually tweak the brightness every once in a while, and it works out pretty well for me. So overall, software, pretty good on this phone. I like it a lot more than I like the MyUI on Xiaomi's. And this is, it just feels like a budget Pixel to me. Very budget. Don't take that as the camera's good. We'll get into that later. It's definitely not where Pixel is in terms of cameras, but it's pretty nice. So talking about the screen a little bit, when you're going through the software, this phone is pretty performant, and like I said, it has a 120 Hertz OLED screen, so if you're watching shows or movies, it looks fantastic, and if you're scrolling on a web page, that 120 Hertz, you can really feel it, and it makes the phone feel snappier than it has any right to. Talking about media consumption, this speaker, while it is only a single speaker system, where a lot of phones like my A34 have dual speakers, it sounds really good and it doesn't get blown out. So I really like it. I do wish that it was on the top of the phone though, because usually I'll have my finger here or something if I'm listening to maybe some music on my phone and I'm not watching in landscape. So I find myself covering the bottom speaker every once in a while. But that's something that with habit you could get away from, and if you don't do that already, then maybe you just won't mind at all. But overall, the screen and the speaker on this phone are amazing. Really, the screen is what really matters in this phone. It also has this little hole punch notch, which a lot of phones like my A34, which are more expensive, have the little drop down U notch, the water drop notch, and I much prefer this. Although I'm not super picky, I've said in my A34 video that I actually enjoy the screen on this phone, which is true. I really like that it's OLED for the price, but this phone honestly just blows it out of the water. I would probably get this over that phone if I were looking for a phone currently. Well, I'm always looking for phones, but as a main phone, I would probably prefer this. So let's get into the camera a little bit. That's where this phone really takes a big hit. It's got a 50 megapixel main camera up here, and then it has a 2 megapixel macro camera, which like most budget phones is absolutely useless. And then a camera that I've never even heard of, it's called a VGA bokeh camera. I think it's used for portrait shots, and pretty much, as I always say in all of my reviews, I'll throw up some pictures and you can make up your own mind about whether or not you like the processing of the phone. Personally, I don't like it much. The best camera is actually the 8 megapixel front camera for selfies. So I'll just show those pictures and you can decide for yourself if you like it. You and I, you and I.
Am I gonna make it in your business?
Yeah, I'll get a macro of that. Look at how the sound sounds. Ooh, your skin, you're glowing.
Oh, thank you. It's the snow.
So red. Okay, so that was the camera on this phone. Let's get into the battery a little bit here. So this phone has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and it supports 18 watt fast charging. Sadly, for whatever reason, this phone doesn't allow the battery data to be read by AccuBattery, so the app that I usually use to give me kind of ideas of my consumption and how long the phone will last just doesn't work. But I can say that this phone just keeps on running. It's got a really good battery, so that's something that I care a lot about. And like I said, I'm unable to actually see in AccuBattery how long it lasts, but based on my usage patterns, this phone has been up there with some of the best battery contenders that I've used on this channel. Also, it's really nice that it has 18 watt fast charging. I know the A14 here only has 15 watt fast charging, which I know kind of similar, but that 3 watt difference can sometimes mean a lot depending on the tuning of like the charging algorithm, how often it's at 18 watts versus 15 or lower. So overall, this phone charges decently fast, especially in the American market where the only competitors that really go fast are high-end Motorola's and OnePlus's. Even the Galaxy S23 Ultra is like, I think 45 watts, which isn't that fast. So this is pretty decent when it comes to that. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about performance and gaming. So this phone is running the MediaTek Helio G99, which is a gaming processor that's been out for a while now. A lot of budget phones have been using it, so it's nothing to write home about. This phone does have 6 gigs of RAM though, at least the version that I got, which makes it feel pretty snappy, and overall it's a good experience. So it's better than my A14 for sure when it comes to gaming and performance, and I'll just play a little Alien Isolation and show you guys how it runs. Alright, so I've got Alien Isolation loaded up here. You can see I'm running around, looking around. Everything's loading all right. There is occasional hiccups and stuttering, but most of the time once the shaders have loaded in, with that 6 gigabytes of RAM, it runs plenty fine. I'm not the biggest gamer on phone. I do love playing games, but it's usually on my Steam Deck or my computer. So honestly, when I play phone games, it's usually either this for about 10 minutes or something like Dead Cells, which runs absolutely fine on this phone. I imagine Genshin Impact would run okay. I just don't like downloading that game because it's like 20 gigabytes and I don't like playing it. And it's just not my favorite game. So overall, the performance of this phone is pretty stellar given the price. And then you add in the OLED screen and it's just amazing. So let's just go into the conclusion for this. Overall, this phone to me is mostly pros with a few cons. The biggest pros are the amazing flagship level display that you get with this phone, 120 Hertz and an OLED. You're not going to find that at this price in any other phone, even like Chinese phones. And if you live in the US, this is going to be a way better phone because you'll get support from the company and you'll be able to return it through Amazon if you don't like it. And it's just overall pretty great. I also really like the speaker on this phone. It gets decently loud. I like the charging speed. And I love the battery as well. So overall, that's a lot of pros for me. The only real cons are that I don't know how many software updates this phone's gonna get, so you might have to rely on GSI ROMs, which for me, I personally don't really mind because I love tinkering with phones. But for you, that might mean that it's just an amount of work that you don't want to put in and you'd rather get something like the Galaxy A14 that will get some more software updates and sacrifice some of the other good things about this phone. Another con, as I'm sure you're already aware, is that the camera, I think, on this phone is pretty bad. If you're going to be taking a lot of pictures and you care a lot about how good they look, then this might not be the phone for you. But if you're like me, where your significant other or someone that you're always hanging out with has a really good camera and takes pictures, then maybe that's not an issue to me or to you. To me, I don't really care about my camera all that much. But overall, I would highly recommend this phone to anyone who loves a good viewing experience and loves having a good battery life. Or if you're trying to find a phone for your grandparent or your kid or someone who isn't very picky about their technology, this is going to be a great phone for them. And it's going to save you a lot of money. So I would give this a very high recommendation. Honestly, I think of all the phones I've reviewed, this is the one I would buy, especially if you're on a constrained budget. I just absolutely love this thing. All right, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Hit me up if you have any questions. If you don't, I hope you enjoy. Just redo the conclusion. All right, so let's do a quick conclusion for this phone. As I'm sure you're already aware, I'm a huge fan of this phone. It's got that nice punchy OLED that's at 120 Hertz. You're not gonna find that anywhere else in this budget. It's got a pretty good speaker system. It's got a really good battery. It's got the audio jack, which I don't really use, but a lot of people do. Expandable memory. Pretty good selfie camera, and It's awesome that it has an under-screen fingerprint reader, 6 gigs of RAM, a pretty decent Helio G99 processor, pretty much just a ton of positives. On the negative side though is going to be the camera, the software updates that may or may not come. I don't know, they don't have any promises. But on the flip side to that, if you love tinkering, this phone's going to be awesome for you because you can load GSI ROMs and you'll potentially be able to get a lot more life out of this versus something that's locked down a little more. Also, the screen auto brightness through software isn't very great. The camera's not fantastic. But look, honestly, to me, this is probably my favorite phone that I've reviewed yet on this channel. It's also my first new phone, and I really like it. I can't recommend this enough, especially if you don't care all that much about camera, because really to me that's the biggest downside of this phone is the camera's not very good. So if you're looking for a phone and you don't care much about camera, or you're giving it to your kids or maybe your grandparents, then I would highly recommend buying this. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, like, hit the bell, or don't, whatever. I'll see you guys on the next one.